Hello and welcome along to Mondo Chalavit Movies. My name is John and this is going to be what movies I watched in the month of October 2021. Now I did plan to watch a lot more horror this month, but it didn't quite go to plan. When you plan things, it never works out, does it? So I've got plenty of time to watch horror movies, but I did get a few horror movies watched that I want to watch with a view of starting off a franchise, which I did start but I haven't finished yet. Okay, so first of all I watched Hellfest. Now this is the 4K of Hellfest. This come from the US, and I was first turned on to this movie by my good friend Keith from Euphoria Pictures. I'll leave a link down to his channel down below, and he was talking on one of his videos that he was saying this is a really good sort of like modern day slasher, and so that ticked all the boxes for me. It happens at a fun fair sort of. Also Keith said that this movie looks spectacular on 4K, and he was right. I've got to say this is one of the best looking horror 4Ks I've ever seen. That's why I trust Keith when he tells me there's a good movie out there that needs to be seen in 4K. So I got that on his recommendation. I tell you what, I really enjoyed this movie. I was talking to Keith about it actually when we were chatting one day, and I'd said to him this movie really surprised me. Actually, it surprised me in a few of the ways that it went. This group of kids go to a Hellfest, which is a sort of a get-together where people dress up and try to give you frights, and you go on rides and all that type of thing. But in the middle of it, there's a serial killer after them, kind of. So yeah, so this is really a good movie, and I do recommend it if you can find it. Try and get the 4K if you can, although this came from the US. So I must admit I had a really good time in this movie, and I'm want to thank Keith for this recommendation. And it's great to see a modern day horror film that I really enjoy. So that's Hellfest. Next up, I watched one of the worst films you will ever see when it comes to Halloween, but also one of the best films you'll ever see when it comes to Halloween, and it was Offerings. Now, this is from 1989, I believe, and yes, 1989. It's in the Slasher Classics collection, and it is number 36. Now, this movie, basically, if you've seen Halloween, you've seen Offerings. They ripped that movie off like I can't believe they actually could make this movie. It's basically Halloween rehashed in a very poor way. There is a few little sort of changes to it, which make the story even more funnier. The music in here is exactly the same as Halloween. All they do is change a couple of different notes, and all the sound cues and all the music is cued at the same time. If you see things that happened in, like if you get a scene from Halloween that you go, oh, that's definitely what happened in the Halloween movie. The same sound cue will be behind this movie. That they just basically blatantly ripped it off. But I've got to admit, I have such a good time in this movie. It's unreal how much I enjoy this movie. I mean, it's pure trash. There's nothing great about it, but because it's that sort of awful, it's good. The Michael Myers character in here has to be seen to believed, and yeah, the acting in here is atrocious. And I'm sure there was a scene where there was a girl crying, and I'm sure what they used for tears was some kind of I don't know, some kind of jelly that they had knocking about, some kind of eye drop jelly, because it was stuck on her cheek, and I thought this doesn't really, you can tell a mile off it wasn't real water. It was kind of like some glue or something. I can't even describe how bad this movie is. But if you're into movies that are so bad they're good, you will really get a good time with Offerings. Next up, I watched Nightmare on Elm Street. Now, what I wanted to do was I wanted to watch the whole 7 movies in here, and I wanted to rank them for this video, but it never happened. So what I did was I got Nightmare 1 and Nightmare 2 watched. So I'll not really tell you too much what I think about them, because I want to do that on a ranking when I do a ranking video of this. I haven't seen these movies, some of the movies, since they actually came out. I'm sure I've never seen any of these apart from on VHS, so that shows you how long ago this was. I've got to admit that the part 1 and part 2 look spectacular on Blu-ray, and but I'm going to tell you exactly what I thought about them when I go through a ranking on this, because it's like watching these movies for the first time for me. Although I could remember practically everything to do with part 1, when I watched part 2 it was like watching a brand new movie. So that video is going to come up, but I'm so pleased I started watching these, because I've been putting it off for a long time. And I'm going to get the next movie is obviously Nightmare on Elm Street Part 3. So when I do finish watching these movies, wow, I don't know how long that's going to be, I will rank these all and tell you what my thoughts on them. I'm speaking as somebody who is a big horror fan, and I've watched these many times in the past, but I've really got no recollection of them because it's been that long since I watched it. So you're getting a sort of like nearly like a first time experience for it. Who'd have thought it? So that's Nightmare on Elm Street Part 1 and Part 2. Next I watched and really enjoyed A Clockwork Orange in 4K. Now, everybody knows that I love this movie. I can't speak highly enough about it. I've got to say that I thought that the picture quality in here looked exceptional for what it is. You've got to bear in mind that this is the way that Stanley Kubrick would want it to be shown. So I've got no qualms in it not being the brightest of colours, not being the most colourful of movies, but sometimes when the colour does come into it, the HDR does play a massive part in this, and I do think that this is by far the best you're ever going to see A Clockwork Orange. So my thoughts are on the movie that really it was going to get shown at the cinema, and I said to my wife, do you want to go and see Clockwork Orange in the cinema? She says, no, I don't think I can stand it. And I thought, well, I think she's overacting. But when I watched this again for the first time in quite a few years, I thought, yeah, there's a lot in it that I don't think would have sit right with it, which is fair enough. And I've got to say that it's not a movie for everybody, but I had such a good time in this movie. And I'll tell you what I noticed in this movie more than I have in previous watches, that how funny this movie is. There's a lot of comedy in here that you don't really remember, but there's more. I think it might have been played for the fact of the subject matter is so kind of out there and violent, that they wanted to put some, that Kubrick might want to put a bit of comedy into the mix. So, but I can't speak highly enough about this movie. If you can get this version, because it's got an extra disc in with 2 brilliant extra features, lots of hours worth of watching there. So that's A Clockwork Orange. Next up, me and my wife went to the cinema and watched No Time to Die in IMAX, and we had a great time in this movie. I do think that this whole character arc of this James Bond has just been done really well. I'm not a huge fan of all the James Bond movies. In fact, I would only say that I would rewatch Roger Moore movies, and I wouldn't really touch the other ones. It's just not my scene. But I do think for some reason me and my wife really like Daniel Craig and his whole take on James Bond. But we really enjoyed this movie. I've got, with no spoilers, I'm not going to give any spoilers away in this movie, but if you're a fan of James Bond, this is a great movie to see. I think that there's a lot of interesting stuff in here. I think there's a lot of things that I was thinking would happen, but that didn't happen. And yeah, I just think that it's interesting to see where James Bond's going to go now, who the next James Bond's going to be. But I think that this was a great entry. And I'll tell you, the people I've spoken to about it, and a lot of my friends have actually watched this movie at the cinema and really enjoyed it. We watched it in IMAX, and the screen was huge, and we love watching films in IMAX if we can. It might not have been true IMAX, but it just looks stunning with the size of the screen. So that's No Time to Die. Next up, me and my wife watched Hero. Now, we watched it on Sky Movies in high definition. I bought this actually on DVD from CEX for £1, and it does look alright, the DVD, but I tried to see if it was on Sky Movies. It was for free, surprisingly enough, because Sky Movies seem to charge quite a lot for films that have been out for donkey's years, but never mind, which I wouldn't buy. And this movie is a great movie, actually. It's got a thing on there that says Quentin Tarantino Presents. Now I can see why he's got a sort of a liking of this movie, because it's not told like linearly, if that's a word. Wow, try saying that after 10 pints. And I think that this movie is quite clever as well. Yes, it's a kind of people flying around with swords and whatnot, but the cast is absolutely brilliant, and it's got a really good story that's told in an unconventional way. And the actual sets that they've got here, they're ginormous, and the production value on here is astounding. So it's one that I would highly recommend anyone would see. You'll have a great time in this movie. I know we did. Like I say, the cast is one of the best casts I've seen, and the actual story to it is a lot better than most sort of kung fu movies. So that's Hero. Next I watched, are you sitting down? Deep breath, the Harry Hill movie. Now I really like this one. Now don't switch off, I'll tell you why. I'm a big fan of Harry Hill, and if you don't like Harry Hill, you will not like this movie at all. So basically it's only for Harry Hill fans, I think. Yes, it is quite daft, but I quite like that. It's got a reasonable story, although the story is preposterous, and I just think that it's just a bit of a laugh. I've got to tell you that the picture quality in here was stunning. Yes, some of the humour is borderline childish, but I don't think that that's kind of what I wasn't expecting anything else. I wasn't expecting anything to be clever in it. I wasn't expecting it to be sort of like The Office or anything like that. It just is what it is. It's a daft bit of fun. I'll be interested to see what kids make of this movie, because to be honest, it's quite entertaining, I would imagine, for kids at the right time. but I could imagine people think that this is the biggest load of rubbish you'll ever see in your life. But for some reason, it just connected with us, and I thought, yeah, that was a decent movie. All the people in it I thought were good, and it was quite a good cast as well. And I'm quite a big fan of people in this particular movie. I couldn't believe some of the stars that were in it. So anyway, that's a Harry Hill movie. It's only recommended by me for people who like Harry Hill. But for £1, I had a really good time with it. And you've just got to see what you see. Next up, I watched Deep Red, or Profondo Rosso. Now, this movie looks spectacular in 4K. It's one of my favourite ever Giallo movies and favourite ever Dario Argento movie. In fact, it is my favourite Dario Argento movie. This set, I think, is absolutely brilliant. I think the longer version doesn't do this film any good, if I'm honest. I think it makes it sort of drag. So the shorter version must be watched when you're watching this one, especially for the first time. Or if you thought that film was quite boring to be in the first time you watched it in the longer cut. So for me, I just think this is just a work of art, and I'm so glad to have this on 4K. So that's Profondo Rosso. Next up, my wife was saying to me, let's watch some more martial arts. So I said, well, yes. So I looked around and all that, and I come out with this thing from his son's room, because he's a big fan of Asian cinema as well. And we watched Iron Monkey. Now, I thought that this movie was, I remember watching it. I remember watching it quite a few times, way back in the day. I didn't realise how funny this movie was, like a comedy. It's a great movie. It's got some amazing sort of wire work in here. It features Donnie Yen as well, which is just a big box tick for me. This is on the Hong Kong Legends label, the now defunct Hong Kong Legends label. I don't think they ever made it into the Blu-ray actually, but I've got quite a few of these ones. Well, my son has, and I do think this is one of the ones that it's a really good movie. I know it's been re-released on Eureka. I've got it, which I do need to get the Blu-ray of this. It's a great film. Obviously, the fight scenes in here are absolutely brilliant. I think it's widely regarded as one of the classics of Asian cinema. I think it came out in the early 90s. So that's Iron Monkey. Next up, because it is sort of the Halloween month, I had to get some more horror in. And the last one I watched in the way of horror was the 4K of The Thing. Now, I have put this on and just tried it out and just thought, yeah, it's really good, but I wanted to get the full flavour of it because I haven't watched The Thing for a little bit because I knew it was coming out in 4K, so I held off a bit. How many times have we said that? When you're dying to watch a film, but you're just waiting for that 4K to come on. So I got this, the 4K. I had heard mixed reviews of it, but I've got to say, in my opinion, this movie looks astounding. It looks so good. I couldn't believe some of the. I mean, I've seen this film loads of times in some pretty bad qualities actually. Some of the early DVDs and even Blu-rays weren't that good, but this looked exceptional. It's one of the best 4Ks I've seen of these sort of like older movies, especially an older horror movie. I do think that the Carpenter movies, for some reason, always look good on 4K. I've got a few of his movies, and not one of them look bad. And actually, some of them even look quite good on Blu-ray. So I highly, highly recommend the 4K of The Thing. Not only are you getting an astounding movie, which I think everyone loves. I haven't heard anybody say, man, The Thing, it's not that good, is it? That's not something you would ever say about this. I mean, I love this film from the first time I saw it at the cinema, and I loved it again. It just looks like a new film, kind of, after not seeing it for a short while and then watching it in 4K. So that's highly recommended for the movie and also the transfer. That's The Thing. Now here are my top 3 recommendations for this month. At number 3 is Big Eyes. This is directed by Tim Burton and also stars Amy Adams and Christoph Waltz. Now, that ticks a lot of boxes for me. I'm a big fan of all of these people, especially Amy Adams. I think she's absolutely brilliant, whatever she's done. And I've seen in quite a few things, and I think she's an amazing actress. Maybe my favourite actress of today. So this is set in the 50s, and the colours are very primary. And I tell you what, it just looks spectacular. So that was amazing before it even started, how good it looked. So the story when it unfolded, it's a brilliant story. I don't want to go too much into it, but I want to just say that you've got to see this movie to understand how fantastic this story is. You think, what? I can't believe the twists and turns that this story takes. I thought it was just a kind of story about someone who painted. There's a lot more to it than that. So I'm going to leave a link down below to a channel called The Forgotten World of Movies, and Andy on there has released a video recently talking about his Tim Burton collection, And when he was going through it, and when I saw the big eyes, I thought, oh yes, that reminded me about that movie. I think I'm going to have to do that. Actually, to be honest, when he was talking about a lot of the Tim Burton movies in there, I thought, yeah, there's some that I really do need to sort of revisit and pick up. So he's got a great channel, Andy, and a load of people know him. But if you don't know, please get down, just have a look at that video. And he's got it, like I say, he's got a great channel. You have a great time with his videos that he releases. So yeah, so for me, that was a big surprise actually. And actually, I don't think that Andy thought it was that great, but I've got to say that I thought it was just a work of art, if you'll excuse the pun. So that's Big Eyes. So at number 2 is the 1931 Dr. Jekyll and Mr Hyde. Now, I was sent this over on a subscriber mail by my good friend Korishia Ishii. Now, aka the movie hater. He's been a loyal supporter of my channel from day one, and I still don't know what his name is, but never mind. He sent me the double pack DVD, which has got the 1942, I think it is, Spencer Tracy one on there, and also the 1931 one. So I put that on because I want to watch them in their chronological order, and I was blown away by how good this movie is. It's much weirder than I thought it was going to be. It's kind of it's quite dark actually, because the Dr. Jekyll, well, Dr. Jekyll in here is a good guy. You know, he's squeaky clean, and he's going to get married. But the father of his bride is saying you've got to wait, you've got to put it off. So he keeps putting it off, but he keeps saying to his wife, his future wife, you know, I really want to get married. So when the dark side comes out, the Mr. Hyde comes out, and he takes his potion and changes in a really good transformation scene, much better than you would think it was. I was thinking, wow, how did they do this? And I did read on Wikipedia how they did it, and I tell you what, when you watch it, you think that was pretty good special effects. So when he changes into Mr. Hyde from Dr. Jekyll, his character is this sort of really he's going to be obviously going to be a nasty person, but he's after one thing. I think you'll know what I'm talking about. And to me, that this movie, I think, was cut quite a lot when it came out. This is the full version on here, and I wasn't expecting it to have that sort of tone about the fact that he was denied something and he wanted something, and when he took this portion, that sort of beast came out, what he was really after. So yeah, that was such an interesting take on it, one I wasn't expecting at all. I don't know if it'll be in the Spencer Tracy one on that thing, because I can't remember like getting that flavour from a Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde movie, if I'm honest. But wow, what a revelation. So thanks Korishia Ishii for putting me in this film. It's one that I've sort of, you know, it's been in my mind to sort of see, but I've just had no sort of thing to go back to it. But after getting this, I thought, yeah, I'm going to try that out. Can't wait to check the next one out. But I do think that this is going to be the better of the two. So that's Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, the 1931 movie. So my number 1 recommendation for the month is Dune. Now, me and my wife had no intention of seeing this movie, because I remember seeing it at the cinema, the trailer, and thought, that's not for me. It just didn't excite us. To be honest, I thought the characters in the trailer didn't really appeal to us. How wrong I was. Now, the thing that changed my mind on this was because there's a great channel, Paul Tambs, and I'll leave a link down to his channel down below. Please get down to his channel, and I'll leave a link to this review actually, because he put a no spoiler review on it. And from his review, I thought that sounds amazing, because I didn't really know too much about it. I knew that there was obviously the 1984 version, which I remember not caring too much about, and he explained the difference in this movie, and he just really sold it to me. So I'd said to my wife, look, I've seen this amazing review on YouTube, and do you want to go and see this? Because we had a bit spare time. She says, yeah, I'll go on then. And I'll tell you what, we got to see, because Paul explained that it's a slow burner. It's not your sort of out and out Star Wars epic, although it is kind of like a Star Wars epic in a fashion. And the great thing is about Paul's review is there was no spoilers in it, so we didn't know anything about it going into it, and that was the best way for me. So I'm not going to say anything about the movie itself other than it just looks spectacular. I'm really interested in seeing some more of this director's work actually. I've got a couple of his movies. I've got Blade Runner 2049, which looks absolutely amazing, and I've just bought Arrival as well, so that to me thinks that I'm going to get more into his movies and see if they do look as good as Dune looked. There's a lot more to it. It doesn't just look good, it is actually a great movie as well. but it's done in a really, really good way. I can't wait for part 2 to come out. So thanks, Paul, and there's also, like I say, a link down to his channel down below. So that's my number 1 recommendation for the month. That's June. Okay, so thanks for watching. You take care, and I'll see you in the next video. Cheers.